Good morning, soccer fans, football fans alike. Welcome in to Edging a Win here on YouTube. It is the best soccer betting show around, and we're at least in the top 100 on Saturday mornings at 11:15. Listen, we have a big show here for our Saturday, July 8th. Edging a Win. The St. Louis SC team continues to dominate the Western Conference. The USA men look to win their second trophy this summer as Concacaf Gold Cup, knockout round starts tonight, and we're creeping up on the Women's World Cup and the start of English football. It's a good time to be a soccer fan, but before we get into all that, we have to introduce the face of the program, a man who lives, breathes, and sleeps soccer, runner-up to the UK July 4th blood sausage eating contest, and England's face of Oxford United, all the way from his YouTube channel, Ian OUFC. Mr. Ian Allen, welcome in. How are you today?
Oh, Matt, I continue to sit in amazement at these intros that you give me. Firstly, how did you know about that? I thought that was being streamed to a very niche market. And secondly, it is not blood sausage over here. It's black pudding. So get your facts right.
Black pudding.
I am great.
Okay.
Should be another great weekend. Really looking forward to another full weekend of MLS soccer. Concacaf, as you've said. I think we've got some good bets. Hopefully we can get some winners for you, and I think we should jump straight into it.
Black pudding, blood sausage, they both sound delicious.
Oh, don't they just? Oh, don't they just?
All right, we do have a fun show lined up for everybody, so without further ado, let's see if we can't edge out some wins for the weekend. And Ian, I know we're going to start with the MLS. I think you're looking at an Eastern Conference matchup in the 7:30 p.m. Eastern time slot tonight. What are you looking at?
Yeah, so bet number one is Columbus Crew versus New York City FC. And you've already given the time, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we are looking at goals in this one. That is over 2.5 goals. And we've not really talked about Columbus Crew so far this season, but the Golden Blacks are probably one of the most exciting sides in the MLS. They're the top scorers in the whole of the MLS so far, and they are unbeaten in their last 7 games, winning 5 and drawing 2 of them. So for over 2.5 goals in this one, I am looking for Columbus to do a lot of the heavy lifting in this game, in attack and in defense as well. For all their great attacking play, they are still a bit dodgy and a bit vulnerable at the back, and they will be disappointed last weekend being in the lead twice and being pegged back twice in a 2-2 draw with Inter Miami. New York City FC, look, they're not having a great season. They are outside of the playoffs and one of the bottom few sides in the East, but they are a tough side to beat, and it's 7 games unbeaten for them, but there is a heck of a lot of draws in there. But they have scored a goal in each of the last 5 games, and they are looking to try and improve for the second half of this season to try and make a run for the playoffs. Columbus have scored at least 2 goals in 5 of the last 6 games as well. So I see this one being a one that Columbus do edge out a win in, and hopefully that will edge out a win for you guys in our bet one, because we're going for Columbus over Columbus Crew, versus New York City FC over 2.5 goals.
Yeah, the game's not being played in Yankee Stadium, which gives up a lot of goals, but I still agree with you here. Only because Columbus, honestly, Ian, has been a fun side to watch this season. What do you think the reason for that is? They're currently 4th in the East, which is pretty good considering they missed out on the playoffs last season. You think that continues?
I think they're going to make the playoffs this season. I think it's been a huge change for Columbus Crew, and mainly in the mindset of the players, and the way they're playing their soccer this season is completely different to what we've seen in recent years. And that is mainly down to the new coach that came in, and that is Wilfried Nancy. You saw him do this with this Montreal Impact side when he was there last season. He transformed that side and make them into a very competitive team, got them into the playoffs. This season, you've seen now he's left. They've dropped back down, and they're one of the worst sides in the whole of the MLS now. His style of play is possession-based. It's about giving the players a lot of freedom to go out and express themselves, and it's based on making it very, very difficult for opposition to get the ball off them, and then relying on huge switches of play, getting the wing-backs up the field, which creates a space which puts the defense under all sorts of problems. And then you've got attacking, exciting players in there. I think he's just such a great man manager. When I've looked at him, it seems like these players that have maybe lacked a bit of belief, he's really good at like installing the belief in them and really getting them on board to play this style of play, which is not, I wouldn't say it's unique, but it's a very difficult one to play against. I would say the only drawback to him might be that he might be a bit of a one-season wonder. He comes in and plays this kind of way that sides aren't used to, but then when they find it out, they might struggle like 2 or 3. He's never really done it consistently over a number of years. So yeah, you've got huge like bouts of possession for Columbus, almost like they're playing football, passing about the back four possession for possession's sake, but it's done to try and lure the opposition in. And then they'll hit like huge long raking passes out to where the space is, and that will like open teams up. Aidan Morris, Darlington Nagbe, 2 excellent centre midfield players in there, 2 young-ish USA players in there, so that should, excite the US men's national side moving forward as well. 3 clever forwards in Hernandez, Ramirez, and Zelarayan really make the difference up top from them as well. The only trouble is as well, when they lose possession, sometimes their press can be a bit over eager, and that does leave, if sides can beat that press, it leaves huge gaps in defence, and that can be where they can be vulnerable, and that is where they do concede a lot of goals. But they are a fun side to watch, and they do play in quite an enterprising way, which does mean that they do score a lot of goals, which is what you've seen. And I think they're going to continue to be one of the most entertaining sides for the rest of the season.
Yeah, and Montreal's actually really missing their manager this season. In fact, there's been talk in camp of Montreal. Was it the manager or was it the players on the field last year? And it looks like it might have been the manager. So I like the bet. I like the over goals. And I do think Columbus, as he rushes off for a second, he'll be back. But I do want to get into MLS, our best bet number 2 for the weekend, and we're going to talk about our St. Louis City SC team and the Toronto team. They're also playing here in the 7:30 p.m. Eastern time slot. I think we have an interesting matchup in this one today. I'm going to take these 2 teams to draw tonight at what I think is great value at plus 250. Now, you have a team in St. Louis SC that's drawn the least amount of times of any other team in the MLS at just 2 on the season. And you have a Toronto team that has drawn the most times this season with 10 facing off against one another. Welcome back, Ian, to the program. Let's start with this St. Louis SC team, though, who are coming off a win against a bad Colorado side last week. Now, great teams should beat bad opponents, and that is exactly what St. Louis SC did. However, the surprising thing is that St. Louis SC has done this without the likes of Klaus now for the better part of the season and Leuven for the last couple of weeks. And it appears that these 2 will also be out versus Toronto this week. But there's kind of a difference this week, and I do think it plays a role. The St. Louis side will be on the road in one of the hardest places to play in the last decade in Toronto. Now, that might be a little bit different this season, as Toronto only has 19 points through 22 matches, and they have lost their last 4, only scoring 1 goal over those 4 matches. But nonetheless, I think Toronto's going to battle today, and despite their record, they play phenomenal defense at home, giving up less than a goal per match. With St. Louis having some key players out, I think Toronto's defense plays well, and we find ourselves begging, quite honestly, for a better quality game, as this one might end 0-0 or 1-1. So, with the second best today for edging a win, I'm going to take, at a good price, plus 250, St. Louis SC Toronto match to end in a draw.
I think this is the first time I've ever seen you pick a draw. Ever. He doesn't do draws often, so you must know something about this one. But yeah, look, also as well, St. Louis, big game in the midweek. They got LAFC on Wednesday. That is away in LA as well. Any chance? Hope they don't. But do you think there's any chance that St. Louis kind of overlooked this Toronto side today, and that might prove to be their downfall?
Yeah, in short, yes, 100%. Absolutely and honestly, that is another argument I could see for a draw, even with maybe a 1-0 lead late. That is a massive match for the top of the Western Conference. And on a side note, it's kind of funny how actually both the LAFC and St. Louis City matches are midweek this year. I mean, Probably the MLS is kicking themselves that they didn't put one of those on a Saturday evening game for or at least Apple TV is kicking themselves that they don't have it on a Saturday. But yeah, I think St. Louis has been a product, honestly, quite of their schedule at the moment. They had Colorado, bottom team in the West. Toronto's a bottom team in the East, and even Miami after LAFC coming up before the Leagues Cup starts, it's going to be a bad team that they face. So I really do think this could be a letdown spot, but again, great teams never have a letdown spot. So, Ian, quite honestly, I think St. Louis SC is not going to win this. It's either going to be a loss in a letdown spot or it's going to be a draw, and I hope it does come through for a draw. But usually we actually have our own segment for St. Louis SC, but since we're talking about them, do you have any thoughts on their performance or maybe what's upcoming tonight?
Well, firstly, I'm going to take this back to some very biased opinion days here, where we had a staunch rule of never show weakness, never back against your side. So I cannot believe
I'm not
that
backing. I said draw.
Oh, fucking draw. Who wants draws? Oh, yeah, I come from the UK. We love draws, and you're supposed to hate them over there. You're backing it, but anyway, I guess we'll have to allow it for this one, right? Look, easy victory for St. Louis last weekend against Colorado. 2 goals very early on in the game. One from a set piece, one from open play. Brilliant work from Adeniran with that second goal as well. His running in behind is fantastic. St. Louis really good from set pieces as well. Score a lot of goals from corners and free kicks. That's something that you've got to look on. I've also seen them miss some great chances from free headers that really should be going on target, that go way wide. So they should be even better on those stats. Did need Roman Berkey to come up with a big save after 20 seconds in that game. So it just proves that he is just there when you need him, such a clutch goalkeeper. It still amazes me that he is at St. Louis. It's like, what are you doing there? He must have maybe had a hankering for some biscuits and gravy and decided he's got to head over there somehow. But yeah, so obviously Adeniran looks really good up front in the absence of Klaus. But one guy I'd say also looking good is Zeal Jackson in that kind of role behind the front too. I think he's looking really good over the last 2 games as well. And all things just coming off that game, it was just a very comfortable, routine win. And we will be hoping that St. Louis can come in and do that again against the Toronto side that have lost 4 in a row.
We didn't talk about this, about what we were going to speak on air, so this might throw you for a loop here. But talking about Berkey, is there any chance that a team right now in England is looking at Berkey and saying, when the MLS is over in the transfer window, we want to go out and get this guy?
It's definitely a possibility. I mean, as I said, we talked about it last week. He's not a young goalkeeper.
Yeah.
So there might be some call out for after the MLM season. When the season ends, they might be able to loan him into the Premier League for a few months or something like that, or they might be able to make a move. I would say that maybe there's a lot. There's been a change in what top sides look for in a goalkeeper these days, and there's been this emphasis on, maybe basically started through Pep Guardiola, of goalkeepers having to be able to play out from the back, need to be good with their feet, need to be good passers of the ball. And I just wonder if that might be the only thing which Roman Berkey isn't particularly strong at, which might lead to some Premier League sides kind of turning their nose up at him and not going for him. But in terms of shot stopping, I think he's like a fantastic goalkeeper.
Yeah, and that's a good point. He doesn't play the ball well out of the back or at all because they don't really use him. But so hopefully St. Louis at least gets a draw. If I lose this bet because they win the game, I'm not going to hate it. Ian, I know you are looking at one more MLS game tonight. And it is a matchup, I believe, in the Eastern Conference again. So what do you see here tonight?
So my second bet number 3 is going to be Chicago Fire versus Nashville. I say 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're looking at Nashville on the spread. They are +1 on the spread in this one, and that is what I'm going for. In the first game, I talked about one of the most exciting sides in the MLS, and that is Columbus Crew. Well, now we're probably talking about one of the most solid, and that is Nashville. They're currently second in the East, and they're looking to close that gap on Cincinnati. And I put them on the spread and not on the money line, mainly because I was a little bit worried about their away form. Their away form is nowhere near as good as it is when they play at home. That being said, I think you should be confident of them getting at least a draw against this Chicago Fire side that have been extremely lackluster this season. But I do think that it could be a draw, could be the result, the final score in this one, mainly because Chicago does a lot of draws, especially at home. They've had 8 ties this season, and 6 of them have been at home. Nashville are very strong in defense as well. They've got the best defensive record in the whole of the MLS. They are going to be missing Walter Zimmerman tonight through suspension, which is a big loss in the back four. So hopefully they'll be able to cope with that. But I do expect Nashville to keep this game tight. I don't expect this one to be a classic by any stretch of the imagination. Chicago will probably be looking to try and hit them on the counterattack or from a set piece. But I think if Nashville gets the first goal, I think you could see them setting up for a very comfortable victory here, maybe 1-0, maybe 2-0. And I do hope that that is the case, because my third bet for the afternoon is Nashville on the spread +1 in their game versus Chicago Fire.
Yeah, quite honestly, both these teams a little weird to watch. They're not really great teams, as Ian had to go check on Nashville to make sure he put that bet on. But I'll tell you right now, Nashville is kind of a boring team, in my opinion, to watch. And Chicago Fire, quite honestly, are as well. The Chicago Fire is, quite honestly, the only team in the MLS that really has given the St. Louis City team some problems. I know that Chicago Fire had a great U.S. Open Cup run, and they're actually still doing a great job. When Ian comes back, I'm sure he's going to tell us about, and Ian is back. Hey, buddy, how's it going? I know we're going to talk about Nashville.
Sorry. I'm having some nightmares on internet. In this
no worries. I was just telling people on how boring Nashville and Chicago are to watch.
Yeah, I'm not sure what bit I got to. Did I get to any of it before I cut it off? Or?
Yeah, you were done. Yeah, you had made your point. It was perfect timing.
Okay.
But I want to talk about Nashville going under the radar a little bit this season. Listen, they usually make the playoffs, but they really don't ever threaten. It's not a team you kind of think's going to win the MLS Cup. Do you think they have a chance this season to threaten? I mean, they're chasing Cincinnati right now, and they're in good position to at least get a 2 seed.
Yeah, it's so difficult to put them on there to win it, because they're not an exciting side, and they're not going to go out and win any awards for the style of play or anything like that. But it does mean that they're probably going to be a difficult side to play in the playoffs. I think they are going to finish quite high up in the East, and if they can get some home games, they're going to be a tough side to beat on their own field. Their home form is immense. Played 11, won 8, drawn 2, only lost 1, and that 1 was a 1-0 defeat to Cincinnati. So they're a very tough side to beat when they are playing at home. Good defense, as I've already talked about. 7 clean sheets on the season as well. They've got a goal scorer in Harry Mukhtar, I think he was the MLS top goal scorer last season. He's leading the charts again with 13 goals. So they've got a formula to be successful. Good defense, guy who scores goals, keep games tight. Their style of play is pretty basic, 4-4-2 or like 4-diamond-2. So it's pretty much, it's not really built on possession or anything like that. It's getting the ball forward, getting the ball out wide, trying to make the most of the chances, and then keeping games tight and seeing shutout after shutout. They're a side you probably want to avoid in the playoffs because they're going to be tough to beat. I don't know if they got enough to really go and win it. We will see how good they are because they've got Cincinnati away next weekend. So that will be a really big test to see how strong this Nashville side will be and if they are going to be a real contender for the MLS Cup.
Yeah, again, I don't think they'll be able to compete with the MLS Cup itself because of just the way and style they play. I don't think they have that jugular offense that if they are down 2-0 in a match, they can, get 2 quick goals, kind of like you see with LAFC sometimes, or the Seattle Sounders, or really, honestly, St. Louis SC this season. So, it'll be interesting to see. Now, before we dive into my last bet, there are a lot of great games this weekend in the MLS, and I'd like to touch on some of them. I'm going to start with the New York Red Bulls versus New England Revolution. Listen, New England unbeaten in their last 7 matches, but on the road, they have not won a match since May 6th. They even lost to Inter Miami, which should say something about their road form. On the other side, Ian, the New York Red Bulls, to me, they're exactly like the Oxford United of the MLS. I swear to God, I think Oxford United, I think the New York Red Bulls are like the Oxford United of the MLS. They're never great, but they're also never so bad that fans give up hope each and every year.
Well, that sounds more like Wycombe Wanderers than it does Oxford United, Matt. Okay. We're doing League One deep cuts. Yeah. But yeah, look, obviously New England rivalry here. New England Revs have been a weird. I mean, they're just like, you feel like they just haven't hit top gear yet. Like stuttering results, but then you would expect them to go and beat this New York Red Bull side, but you just have your doubts because, as you said, they're not good away.
Yeah, another good one tonight. Real Salt Lake, Orlando City. Both sides, I think you've mentioned, are in good form, or they are in good form. I think good test for both sides. Real Salt Lake, if I'm not mistaken, a couple of weeks ago, you talked about how this might be a team to watch, which then they proceeded to lose our bet and draw at home versus Minnesota. They have, if I'm not mistaken, they have something like 17 points in their last 7 matches. And then on the flip side, Orlando only lost once in their last 11 matches, and they've picked up an astonishing 21 points in that span. And the crazy thing is, if either of these sides' team win today in their respective conference, they would almost jump up to 3rd place. So,
yeah, again, both conferences very, very tight, very, very even, and it should be a really good game. I see this one being very high scoring. Real Salt Lake, just maybe give them the edge being at home, but this one is definitely one to watch if you can.
I'll let you go first on this one. We have Charlotte versus Cincinnati. Cincinnati, again, top in the East. Charlotte coming off their 2nd year in the league. Any thoughts on this fun one with Cincinnati?
Yeah, I mean, this is mainly just looking at Cincinnati, isn't it, really? I mean, they've been absolutely storming away at the top of the Eastern Conference, but in recent weeks, it's only been 1 win from 4. I know they did play, it was a top-of-the-table clash last weekend against New England, and they did I think they were down twice and managed to get a 2-2 draw. So they're hanging in there, but maybe the form's not at their best, so it'll be interesting to just see if they are able to get back to winning ways, or if they're going to be, if this kind of dip in form continues. They should really be winning this game. Charlotte, again, like a lot of sides, not great, but maybe tricky to beat, draw a lot of games, as opposed to like being flat out terrible.
Yeah, and Cincinnati in those 4 recent games where they only got 1 win, the draws and loss were against teams that all kind of at the moment are in a playoff spot. So I don't hate them too much on that. It's not like they're losing to a bad side. Also, the single loss was on the road, and it was I think we keep forgetting this. It was their 2nd loss of the season. So, I mean, It's pretty astonishing. And Charlotte is still trying to kind of figure out what team they are. They've drawn 4 straight weeks in a row, and the only draw that I think was noteworthy in that span is the 3-3-1 against the Sounders, which, to be fair, Sounders were missing some international players. The other 3 draws were against, bad teams. I think Nashville playing a lower opponent today with a chance to get within 3 points of Cincinnati is going to wake the Cincinnati team up as they travel only 5 hours away. It's not really a true test. It's only about a 5-hour drive. So I do think Cincinnati might get back on good form today. And it's a team that you could see an easy win happening. Talk about LAFC, San Jose. That's a good matchup. Cole, friend of the channel in the chat, already said he's going to the LAFC game. So enjoy that, Cole. What do you think about this game? I know you're a big LAFC, LA Galaxy fan.
Oh, yeah, huge. Know so much about them. Look, LAFC, again, what we just talked about, Cincinnati, a dip in form. LAFC coming off, are on a 3-game losing streak, and they'll be desperate to try and snap out of that against San Jose. Tricky game. Both sides not really in the best of form either. San Jose not won in the last 4, 2 draws, 2 defeats in there. So could be a game where both sides pretty tentative to start with. Maybe don't want to go down an early goal. Might be a slow burn, that one. Kind of looking LAFC to maybe eke that one out. Maybe 1-0, 2-1, something like that. I'd expect that one to be a classic.
Yeah, again, though, with LAFC, I think we tend to overreact with great teams when they honestly struggle. I mean, let's remember LAFC only had one loss in their first 13 matches, and they are the second best defensive team in the MLS. Problem with them is they need to put the ball in the net. Last game in their loss, it was a 2-1 loss to the LA Galaxy. They had 18 shots, Ian, on target with 8 shots on goal. I think if they get the ball in the net, all's going to be forgotten of this losing streak, and they're going to set themselves up for another win or another run at winning the Western Conference.
Stupid things happen in rivalry games as well, aren't they? In derby games, sides, the underdog, if you like, seem to play that extra little bit harder than maybe they would if they were playing another side.
That's true. And speaking of rivalry games, I think we have one of the biggest in the Western Conference tonight. It's Vancouver-Seattle. This is a big rivalry game. Having lived in Seattle, they only are separated by about a 3-hour car ride in what was once, quite honestly, a Sounders dominating the rivalry, which made it not really a rivalry. It has turned into a big rivalry in the last couple of years. Let me say rivalry 3 more times for you. But a more balanced result from both sides over recent form. Vancouver's actually won the last 2. Both of these teams, however, tonight missing key players with Vancouver. Brown, Gressel, and Ahmed for Vancouver. They're missing. Seattle's missing 2 goal scorers in Morris and Christian Roldan, and a defensive guy in Alex Roldan. So I think this game might be one you just kind of enjoy. I wouldn't put any money on it because of who's missing, but any thoughts on this one, Ian?
Yeah, it's I think Vancouver will be looking at it and thinking that they might be able to pull off I don't know how much of an upset it's going to be, but might be able to beat the Seattle side. I mean, Seattle did get a very good win, which kind of snapped them out of some bad form last weekend.
Yeah.
Much needed win for them, but they've not been great over the last few. It's quite surprising when you see their form that they are in second place, which shows you kind of a bit how weird the West has been so far. But I would say that Vancouver side, if they win this one, they're still a couple of games back on some sides as well. If they can win those 2 games that they have in hand, they could really start jumping up the table, and you could see them maybe getting up even into 4th place with a couple of wins. So, as you say, it's a 50-50 game, though. It's a coin flip, this one.
Yeah, and I do agree. I mean, with Morris, Roldan's out, I think they do look at it and they're like, hey, maybe we can scrounge up 3 points on this one. But we'll wait and see. That's all I wanted to talk about for the MLS because we actually have a major tournament in Concacaf going on right now, and I'm going to give you my last best bet of the weekend, and that is in the Gold Cup. USA versus Canada. That's Sunday evening. I'm going over 2.5 goals in this one. You can get at even money, which I think is a fair price. We backed, remember, last week, I said USA team to go over 3.5 with Trinidad and Tobago in that deciding match in group play. What did the U.S. do? They put up a 6 spot, and we get a trip to the quarters to face a Canadian side that I'm sure that they did not want to see this early in the knockout round. However, the USA has gone 2 straight games not conceding a goal, and Ferreira has 2 straight hat tricks, almost 2 straight in the first half. So, USA easy winner tonight, right? Well, listen, if it was Guatemala, then I might have said yes. I also wouldn't bet it on the money line if it was Guatemala because it'd probably be minus 1,000. Instead, you get Canada, and USA on the money line is only minus 160. And although there might be a little bit of value there, because I do think that is a little bit lower, and Ian, I know you'll talk about the Canadian side probably in a minute, but I do think somehow this game has the opportunity with a decent Canadian squad to be tied at the end of 90 minutes. So instead, I'm going to go with over 2.5 goals at even money. This feels like such a trap bet at a good price, as Ferreira has this offense in themselves. They're averaging 4 goals per game through the group stage. So I think this could be a trap bet. And yes, I know that these 2 matches that they scored the 6 goals, the USA, were against lower opponents. But hear me out. The Canadian squad has had its problems on the defensive side of the ball. And on the offensive side of the ball, they are just not built or they are built for team play set pieces. So 6 different goal scorers of all 6 goals in group stage for the Canadians. Actually 5 technically, 1 was an own goal. I think the USA fights for their life with a 1-1 game headed into the 70th minute, and somebody's going to break through, hopefully USA. Ian, I know the USA get Canada, and they find themselves on an easy road to winning the Cup. Isn't that correct? Or, I'm sorry. That was your...
I don't think that we expected the USA to beat Canada this early, as you said. I don't think that is going to be much of a problem for the United States. I think this game is more of a nightmare for Canada than it is for the United States. I've not been impressed with this Canadian side at all. Yes, they pulled out qualification and they got their goals in their final group game. I think 4-2 win over Cuba. But with them missing their stars and missing their major players, it's been very lackluster. They're going to have to rely on the likes of Junior Hoylett, on Osario to try and provide some width and some pace to try and get in behind this United States lineup, to try and get some balls into the box to the likes of Cavallini and the likes of Miller. And I do think that they will test this United States backline. This United States backline have had 2 games where they haven't been tested. They struggled a little bit at times when they played Jamaica. So it is a test for the United States. But what worries me is going the other way. This Canadian side is not great on the defense. Not a cohesive unit. Makes silly mistakes. You saw that in the Cuba game. Just silly mistakes to give away a penalty. The second penalty was a bit harsh, but just constantly you would imagine that the United States would be able to put them under enough pressure to create chances over and over again. And as I say, going forward, I would... Look, let's not beat around the bush. It's probably going to be United States-Mexico final, isn't it? And that is what we're all expecting. And that's going to come down to the 2 best sides in CONCACAF battling it out, which it usually does.
Yeah, listen, honestly, if the USA somehow win this, they actually are going to gain a lot of respect for me winning the Gold Cup based on how the draw actually has formed in front of them. So they would need to beat essentially Canada, Panama, and Mexico to win the Gold Cup if the best teams technically move forward. And honestly, I know we're not a top 10 team in the world, or a top team in the world, but in terms of CONCACAF, it is a tough road ahead for them with Panama and Canada in front of them, and Mexico potentially in the final. And speaking of the road ahead, real quick before we sign off, let's just touch on the group stage recap and the knockout predictions. 2 weeks ago, Ian, you and I went through all 4 groups right here on Edging to Win. And wouldn't you know, we predicted 7 of the 8 teams to move on to the quarterfinals. I mean, the only team that we didn't get right was Guatemala. So let's get into some knockout round predictions, and let's start at the top of the bracket. Guatemala versus Jamaica. Who do you have in this one?
Yeah, I think Jamaica will come through and win this one. They've been... Again, we come back to the fact that going forward, this Jamaica side looks pretty powerful. That they look like they're going to have far too much quality to Guatemala. Guatemala, done well to win their group, done well to qualify, but I just think that Jamaica's going to have too much quality for them.
Yeah, actually, I do think Jamaica's going to go through, Ian, but I do think it's going to be closer than most people would think. After Guatemala probably would be seen by a fair weather fan as a huge underdog, and technically they are at plus 450 on the money line. But they do have a midfielder named Carlos Mejia, who is kind of fantastic. In his last 5 international matches, this guy has scored either the first goal of the game or the last goal of the game. So I think if Guatemala somehow was to nick a goal here early, we might be in for an exciting, pretty open match. And I think, though, in the end, Jamaica, who's been putting goals in the net, is going to come through. On the same side of the bracket, to face Jamaica in the semis, you would find yourself with Mexico or Costa Rica. I think we would both agree on this, but just for sake, who's going to win this one?
Yeah, Mexico are going to win it. And the thing we just going to say quickly, in the first game, when United States played Jamaica, I talked about how United States got out of jail a little bit, but it was almost like a bit of a wake-up call for them to say that, we need to improve if we're going to win this tournament. I think the same thing happened to Mexico against Qatar. How they didn't get a goal in that game is baffling. Baffled. I think even NASA are still looking into like how the ball did not go in the net. I think one guy even missed from the goal line.
He did. He did.
And you would imagine that that's a bit of a slap in the face and a wake-up call to Mexico, and they'll be out there saying, look, we really need to go out and put this Costa Rica side to the sword. Costa Rica being a bit, they scrambled through in qualification. 6-4 win in the final group game is a pretty remarkable win, but that kind of shows you that they are a bit of a side that's a bit all over the place, and you would imagine Mexico will be far too strong for them.
Yeah, I think we both talked about this, that like the Mexico team, in our opinion, might be out for blood after that Nations League embarrassing game versus the U.S. So we've kind of predicted that they'd be in a good spot here to at least make the finals. I think they win this game easily. I think my only hesitation here is that Costa Rica, quite honestly, has been a second half team. 5 of the 7 goals in the tournament that they've scored have come in the second half. So if I'm a Mexico side, Ian, and it's 0-0 at halftime, might be a little bit nervy given the fact that Costa Rica has put some goals in the second half.
Yeah, absolutely. They're not a poor side. They're decent. Even history shows you they're a decent side. They're not going to lie down and make it easy. So yeah, exactly right. If they are in the game, they will definitely be battling tooth and nail in this one.
So that would put Jamaica against Mexico. On the other side of the bracket, we're going to start with the USA versus Canada matchup. Again, I took the over as my best bet, but Ian, who do you think actually moves on in the bracket?
Yeah, I think United States will move on. I think this will be. I just think this will be a comfortable win for the US. I can see this. I'm actually predicting a 3-0 win for the United States in this one. I really am. I think they're just going to. It's Canada's side has not been good, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the likes of Ferreira. I'm looking at the likes of seeing Busio, Mihailovic. I think this United States side is playing with a lot of freedom, a lot of confidence after those 2 big wins, and I think they're going to take that forward. Crowds have been amazing for the US games as well, and I think that they're just going to inspire this side and move them forward in a big victory over Canada.
So listen, I quite honestly think the USA did not want to see Canada in this first match. And I think we disagree on a little bit on how easy this is going to be. But I do agree that at the end of the day, the U.S. will win this one. And even if for some reason the offense is not as high as the 13 goals that they put up in group stage, they have, check this out, they have not conceded, and this is, I didn't even know this till this morning, they have not conceded a first half goal in Gold Cup in Gold Cup matches in 22 straight games.
Who?
The USA. The USA have not conceded a goal
in the first half to Jamaica.
Did they?
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. In knockout stage. In knockout stage.
Oh, okay.
In knockout stage.
Okay.
Sorry, let me preface. Not group stage, but 22 straight knockout stage matches. They have not allowed a goal. Sorry. But,
That's okay. Look, I love it. I just unraveled the whole stream there.
You did, but it's knockout. I forgot that word. Yeah.
This is a USA. I mean, I've heard this on streams, and I'm only going to use it, and I think it's a little bit disrespectful, but it's a B or C team, USA side, and it's also a B or C Canada side. And I just think the strength is the US side just looks so much stronger than what I've seen from Canada. They just look so... That Canada looks like a freaking League Two side with like Junior Hoylett, who is a over-the-hill ex-Premier League player.
Listen, I know the USA is going to win, but if they don't, that'll be a discussion for next week. The last game in the quarterfinals here, I think, is going to be the most exciting match, and I think the winner of this one's only going to win by maybe 1 goal, or this might even go to penalty kicks, and it is Panama and Qatar. Who are you taking in this one, Ian?
Yeah, I have a feeling you're going to go for Qatar. I'm going to go for Panama. I think Panama... It's kind of two sides. They're not kind of like good against each other. You know, there's very contrasting styles. Yeah. Panama usually going to be a lot more kind of physical in this game. Going to like really try and bully this Qatar side. Qatar side are going to try and get the ball down, get it into space, try and exploit the kind of pace in the lack of pace in this Panama side, if you like. I just feel that Panama are a little bit more organised, and I think that like they just might nick this game. But this one could be the one that goes all the way to penalties.
Yeah, I do think it's going to be a close game. In fact, I think in recent years, this is the first match of the quarters. It is tonight, I think 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. Listen, my heart wants to take Qatar because I really do like this squad. I had them coming out of the group. They made it out of the group. But I'm also a sports bettor, and I put money on games, and my head says to take Panama on this one, as I honestly do think they've looked a far more dominant team, or they were a more dominant team in the group stage, and I think everything you just said does equate to them winning this game. So I do like, I like Panama.
Qatar have sort of like been competitive against every side. I know they pulled off a bit of a fluky win against Mexico, but for Qatar's point of view, it's like after 2 games, it was part of looking at it thinking, why did we bother turning up to this Concacaf Gold Cup?
Yeah.
Now they've got through. If they can nick a win against Panama and get into a semi-final, all of a sudden it's like, yeah, it's really, really good tournament from us, progressing as a nation. So it's amazing, like the fine margins between success and failure.
All right, real quick, semifinals, Jamaica, Mexico. Who you got in that?
Head says Mexico, heart says Jamaica. So I'm going to go, unfortunately, Mexico.
Head says Mexico for me. Heart says Mexico for me. I like Mexico in the finals there. USA and Panama, if that is what it is. Who you got in that one?
Wow, I think I'm going to get my Panama hat on and go with the Panamaniacs in this one, Matt.
You know what's funny? We did not talk about this. 100% transparency. We did not talk about this portion of our live stream today. And wouldn't you know, I am also going to take the Panamanians.
Oh, no way.
Yes.
Oh, shut up. I'm going to take United States.
Yes. No, listen, I honestly think the United States is going to be a product of their group in making people think that they're better than they are with Trinidad. I actually think Trinidad and who was the other one? St. Kitts. Well, St. Kitts is horrible, but Trinidad in the last few years has been a much better team. I think they've just, fallen off the cliff and they're just a piece of crap. So I think those 6-0 wins look better than they are. I think Panama is going to be a good team here, and I would not be surprised if the USA disappoint us again, and that puts Mexico and Panama in the finals. So any thoughts on my prediction there?
Yeah, I just want to touch on the fact you called Trinidad a pretty good side and a piece of shit in the same sentence.
It's a different decade.
Oh, I like that one. I think the USA. I would be surprised if the USA lost to Panama.
Would you? I think it's gonna be closer than usual. So if it's Mexico or USA or Mexico and Panama, who do you think is gonna win? That's the question we'll have to ask ourselves next week, as that final is on Sunday. But final thoughts, Ian. It's a big weekend of MLS and some Gold Cup here today.
Yeah. But just one final thought from me on a game. I think it's literally kicking off in a minute's time, so I've probably missed all the pre-match on it, which is great. Under-21s, European final, England versus Spain, kicking off in 2 minutes' time. So hopefully, from my point of view, the young Lions can get a nice, good victory in that one.
Well, on that note, I'm going to go root for Spain. I'm going to get Ian out of here so we can watch it, and we will see you all next week right here on Grandstand Bettors for another edition of Edging a Win. Have a good